evening. Welcome to Unsuited. We're here with our second episode of the third season. This entire season, we're focusing on women in law. We talk to them about their triumphs, their challenges, and all the ecosystems that have been enablers. Our guest today is Tejal Patil. She's the Senior Legal Advisor for India and South Asia with OYO. Tejal started her career with a law firm in Bombay, then transitioning to the in-house role, doing various roles through the in-house space, both pan-India and then moving countries. Tejal's actually moved cities and countries all through the 25 plus years of her career as a lawyer. The one thing she's consistently done is embraced change. And her philosophy around that is pretty simple. Don't plan too much in advance because you never know what life's going to throw at you and how it'll surprise you. Hi, Tejal. Good evening. Welcome to the show. Hi, thanks for joining. Our second guest is Aparna Mittal. She's the founder of Samana. Aparna started her career with law firms, then moving on to partnership fairly swiftly. She then wanted to explore her potential probably beyond the norm and believed that skills were transferable. That's when she decided to make the leap into entrepreneurship, founding this Center for Policy Law. Hi, Aparna. Welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Thank you. All right, Vikas, over to you.
Yeah. Good morning, ladies from London. Good afternoon, where you are in India. As Tanisha mentioned, you're both first-generation lawyers, making it to the top, of your respective careers. One in-house, one as partner, and then also setting up her own entrepreneurial firm. Just really want to tell our audience, how has that journey been? Especially in a legal world that's dominated by men, and along your journeys, any experiences, that have left an indelible mark on yourselves. So, Aparna, we'll go with you first.
Sure. Thank you, Vikas, for that question. So I think more than gender, I think it's both age and gender. And, law per se, irrespective of the kind of practice, tends to be very hierarchical. There is this, this kind of concept of you have to wait your time and only then you will get certain opportunities or particular kind of exposure. So I realized that, in addition to hard work, there was always a lot of difficult conversations to be had. And I think to make your mark or, and I don't want to use the word success because that means different things to different people. But I personally think that, you have to have a very clear vision for yourself, not in a as Tanisha, you were saying, I have to do this in this many years, but I don't like what is happening or I like what is happening. I want to do it in a different manner. And you have to cultivate that confidence to kind of speak up for yourself and really challenge the norm or challenge the stereotype. Because unless you do that, you will not be able to bring your own unique talent or thinking to the conversation. And I think in a long journey of, 10, 12, 14, 16 years of professional life, there will be ups and downs, right? I mean, it's bound to be. But I think what's important is that you have to assert yourself and you have to make your own case based on your own work and merit to let people take you seriously and to define the boundaries that you want them to respect for you.
Yeah. When you say having others take you seriously, was that something you learned with experience and wisdom as you go along that kind of career path?
Absolutely. So I don't want to, get into areas of harassment because invariably when you talk about being taken seriously, one goes in that direction. But I think I realized fairly in my first year itself that I had very clear opinions about things. Both it could be on a point of law or it could be about how we are organizing certain things at the law firm. And I always found it very difficult to keep my opinions to myself. So, no matter how much people liked it or did not like it, I wanted to have my say. And I think that's something that you have to be your own authentic self overall. And thankfully, the first place that I worked at, the leadership was very, very open to young people going and speaking their mind and, challenging the status quo in some way or the other. But I did realize that unless you assert yourself, unless you speak your mind, you may not agree with everything, but at least unless you create that space where you can respectfully have a conversation, which could be a divergent conversation, you are not going to be able to do what you really want.
Yeah, I think that's great advice because, especially when you're young and you're starting your career, that's not a neat thing that comes naturally to everyone, especially like you mentioned in hierarchical structures and, large corporates. Having the confidence to speak your mind, especially against those that are seasoned, takes time, and not everyone kind of rises to that challenge. Tejal, let's move over to you because obviously you've had, you've also been, around a few years now as well, and have made it to, very top in terms of the in-house community. So if you just kind of talk a bit about your journey.
So, let me kind of get back to you a little bit about first generation lawyers. This is a profession where we kind of underestimate the first generation a little bit. Like you'd never ask someone, are you a first generation software engineer? The way it works is, there are certain professions, whether it's a doctor or a lawyer or where, through the years, the, what do you call it, the pedigree and the kind of backgrounds you come from has had a lot of importance, especially when our country was developing. So in terms of sort of starting out a legal career, one always later thinks about, I miss those breakfast conversations where a parent or an uncle or an aunt could have familiarized me with the law and I would have understood what it's all about. I would have had another few uncles and aunts who I could have called up and sort of asked for legal advice when I got stuck in my first year of internship or things like that. So I think it does definitely have an impact. And there is a larger obstacle to overcome if you're a first generation in this profession. The other piece really in the in-house world, both, I think both in the external counsel and in the in-house world, there used to be more male. The lucky part for me was that at the time I entered the profession, India was also opening up to FDI for the first time. So there was a little bit of an advent of what we call the new age law firms, as well as the in-house companies, wanting in-house people doing different areas of law, which were not hallmarks or what I call territories of the older generation. This was new to everyone. So I think that created a little bit of a level playing field and allowed new people to come into the profession without feeling extremely disadvantaged, is the way I would see it. Some of that culture still has to be dealt with, but as we go into, cyber, artificial intelligence, we get into privacy, we get into new areas. I'm hoping that, the fact that you're not related to someone or you are new, allows you to grow as much as anyone else.
Yeah, that's a great point because I think we kind of overlook the fact that you're right. When we say doctors and lawyers, there's that generational thing. You can't, there is normally a, passing down to second or third generation, but you're right. We never say you're a first generation software engineer, which is an interesting point. And I know when we've interviewed different people on the program, you do hear that story about, I was at the table, my uncles, my father, grandfather were always talking, and that inspired me to, get into the law. And then you have that natural sounding board, to help you on that journey. So, and it's also interesting you mentioned, but even back in the 90s, using the phrase new age lawyer, which today is what we're looking at again, the new age lawyers. The other thing we want to talk about is that for both of you, change has been a real common theme. So Tejal, when you started off, you initially wanted to be get into the ISA route. You gave up that dream to become a lawyer. You moved to a law firm. Then you started your own practice. Then you eventually moved in-house. Plus you moved cities across India as well as globally. And you then actually started your own in-house career, not in India, but in Singapore, so overseas. So how did you make all that happen? And how was that experience of starting in-house overseas compared to, what most peers do is start,
So
domestically?
I wish I could tell you it was a plan, right? But just like Tanisha said, there was no plan. I just went with the flow. So it was never a lifelong dream of mine to be a lawyer, nothing when I was a little child that I wore black robes and looked into the mirror. Nothing like that ever happened. So like you said, it wasn't moving from one dream to another. So I had literally joined government law college for the library. I thought I would buy brilliance tutorials and I would do my IAS entrance exam and serve the country, right? That was the idealistic dream. The canteen and friends and all of that took over, and I did well in law too. And it just so happened that all those tutorials gathered dust, and I became a lawyer. So, I wish all of these things in my life were planned at some point, but I really didn't plan anything. Even moving cities, I was in a law firm in Bombay. And, when you're newly married and you can't afford a house in South Bombay next to the court, you commute. And 1 year on the suburban train is all I could take. And I was like, I need to get out of here. And I know friends and peers who actually did that for years and today are one of the leading luminaries in the country. So, yes, sometimes I look at that and say that could have been a path, but I couldn't take it. And when the Bangalore opportunity came up for my husband, we took it. And the other thing that I want to sort of tell all the women, that I was a trailing spouse after that, because we had a little pact, my husband and I, saying whoever earned more money, the other one would follow. And I lost that battle my whole life. So wherever I have moved to has been due to the spouse. And hence, I literally kind of took what I got. When I reached Singapore, I didn't have a job. I was expecting a baby. I had a little one. I had to kind of figure out what to do with her. But I was getting a job as a contractor in GE. And I was like, look, nothing else is coming along. So I took it. So this entire thing of going in-house or moving from a law firm, nothing was planned. So change happened. Yeah. And I guess it continues to happen. So which is why I've kind of come back. I did though always wanted to come back to India. I always felt like Indian lawyers and Indian in-house teams didn't have the exposure, the coaching, the training to be the best. And so, I was really thrilled when I came to India and got the in-house role. But that was the only one I sort of all my life thought maybe one day I'll do that. And it happened years later.
Yeah. And how was it? I mean, when you said you joined, GE in Singapore as a contractor, but how was that kind of route? Was that easy, especially as you'd been doing, you'd been a lawyer before that for, 6-7 years prior to that?
See, I think one had to swallow one's ego a little bit. At that point, you're in an alien country, you're not qualified there. You think you're really smart. The whole world is yet to discover that. And I, pretty much took what I got. And it somehow at some level didn't bother me, because the strangest part was I was filling in a role for someone who was 20 years my senior, who was leaving the organization. They wanted me for, 3 months to a year to help that transition. At the end of that, they gave me his role. So, it just happened. So the way I see it is, don't think about what it is, where you are in the organization, but the fact that you need to get back, and what is it that's going to get you back and get you thinking again. And then afterwards, I just think hard work and dedication takes over.
Yeah.
Very different in-house abroad, but a slightly easier transition than a law firm. It was tough also at that time because you only had foreign law firms who were looking for foreign degrees. And while I was a solicitor from England, I hadn't practiced abroad. So it was a tough entry.
Yeah. And I think, because we're talking about 20 years ago, you still did very well to get into a foreign corporate, and start up from, essentially you were starting from scratch again. But I think those kind of opportunities don't always exist in India, even today. For people to get back into it becomes difficult.
And that's what I think, right? Sometimes you have to step back to step forward, and you need to kind of do different things because you don't know at which point they will come back and help you. So, for example, when I was moving to Japan, I actually went kicking and screaming. And the role after that was an Asia Pacific role with a Japanese CEO. And the first thing that kind of, I think, went well in the interview is, oh, you've lived in Japan, you understand the culture, you can do this.
Wow.
And I didn't know it was going to help me at the time. I was, really finding ways and means of remote relationship and all these things, that one goes through for a while and then says it won't work. So you never know what experience in life will come back at some point and support the next move you make.
Yeah, I think we'll move on to your Aparna now, but I think great what you're mentioning there, Tejal, as well as that hard work and dedication. I think adaptability is so important, and especially like you said, from you've set up on a career, you've done well at law college, you'd worked at a law firm, started again, you were doing well, but having that, managing your ego and being adaptable to just say, right, I'm going to start again and let's see what happens. I mean, that's a great trait and a great lesson to say to others, especially youngsters, about swallow the ego and just take it one step at a time. And 20 years, 20 years on, you're one of the leading lights in the in-house community now. Brenda, we're going to move to you because obviously, you've shown big change as well. Like you went to law firm, you became partner very young, within some of the leading law firms in India, and then I think to the dismay of probably your peer group and even youngsters today would hear that you gave it up. You gave that dream up to start your entrepreneurial journey. So why did you take that leap, and how did you manage the shock factor that comes with such a move?
Okay. So, and I don't want to sound immodest, but if I were to look back at my own career trajectory, I always wanted to do more than what the defined role brought to the table or what was the expected norm. So I remember even when I was a managing associate, my partners always told me, you're already doing what we expect a partner to do. So I think that just came naturally because I got bored with the given very easily. I had been partner for almost 6 years by the time I quit the second law firm I was at. I loved the work, corporate law and M&A. I loved it, but there was a growing void inside me because I thought my skills were not changing. After, having practiced for 13, 14 years, you pretty much, and I don't want to sound arrogant, but I think you've done a lot of, variety of work and a lot of complex matters. It doesn't excite you anymore. And I also somehow thought that my skills were not growing. I had been partner for 6 years. I was doing everything that one needs to do and perhaps more. And I had begun to feel really, unsatisfied and monotonous in some way. So, and I always believe, I've always believed in not following a traditional path. I followed a traditional path more by default, not because I planned it that way. And it was quite okay for me to take a break and go back to the drawing board. And because I think that, no matter how much a job pays you or what your designation is, at some point, if you're not feeling satisfied, if you're not feeling mentally happy, you need to step back and reassess what you're doing. And when I transitioned, I just took a break. I didn't know what I was going to do. I took a 6-month break. I did nothing. I literally didn't even open my laptop. I did nothing. And then slowly I said, let's do something which I felt strongly about. So, gender and particularly transgender was an area of my interest. Environment was an area of interest. And then I started putting my mind, I created a plan B and I said, okay, let's launch this. I'll be honest with you, I got a lot of condescension when I started. I personally believe I was a little, and I don't want to sound arrogant, I was a little ahead of the market in India. People didn't really understand what I was planning to do, especially with the diversity and inclusion practice, which now has become the buzzword, ironically. There was a lot of condescension. There was a lot of, is everything okay? There was also a lot of voyeuristic curiosity, which I did not appreciate, because people wanted to know if something went wrong. And that's why you left a law firm. And I think that at some level, as lawyers, we take the mold or the journey so seriously that we forget to give people space, that you may want to do something different, and there is always this sense of you have to be this in a particular organization for you to be good, right? And I think that's what was a shock factor more for people than for myself. And I set sail with a very clear vision of what I wanted to do. And entrepreneurship, of course, has its ups and downs. It has its own journey. So a lot of it has been a big learning exercise for me. And I am very, very happy I did that, because it makes you go back to your roots in some way, to really go back in terms of what you can do, what you want to do, what your ethical matrix is, how much are you willing to push yourself. And I really, really have loved that journey of self-exploration and also self-expression through my work, which now traverses both legal work and D&I consulting, which is really a lot more perhaps on the psychological aspect of it. Like when I do trainings on unconscious bias, I use my legal skills, I use my everything I have observed in people, working with them, interacting with them. I can bring that all together and put that out in the practice that I do, with an aim that we can make workplaces better for far more many people in this world than just the few that we talk about.
That's super point.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Because I think what Aparna's done is actually she's gone ahead and just redefined success, right? We've all got such traditional views on what success entails or what accomplished means. And then here she's sitting at partnership and she says, okay, bye, I'm off. That's very, very interesting, Aparna. Sorry, Vikas, you were saying.
Yeah, I think most people would have thought you were crazy at the time. Maybe, that
Yeah, absolutely.
You've achieved the dream, and you achieved it young.
I must add, because, sorry, there's some lag. Why don't you finish?
Yeah, and you didn't just achieve partnership at any firm. Like you were at some of the leading firms when you were doing that role. So I think, how did you manage that? Because that's something that even today most youngsters aspire that. Right, this is my plan: get into a tier 1 law firm and work really hard, burning the candles all the time. Burning the candle. So within 10, 12 years, make partner.
I think because two things. There is no running away from hard work, no matter what you do. And there is no running away from, a lot of sometimes the drudgery that comes with professions like law, because a lot of it is detail oriented. You have, tons of paper to go through, etc. I don't want to sound, arrogant again, but I think I always wanted quality than quantity. And in some way, the money or the designation or the visibility was a byproduct of what I would like to believe was the hard work that I put in. And in my head, I thought that if I try doing that in any other new practice area, it may take longer, because I didn't have a brand behind me. I was starting a new brand. But I honestly believe, and this is something, I have seen since I was really a kid, that if you work hard and you have a good conscience and you work with integrity, you will find what you are chasing. It may take longer. There are no shortcuts. It may be a tough journey. But you will find what you want to do. And I think that when I started Samana, even though there were a lot of questions around me, there were no questions in my head. I was very clear, this is what I wanted to do. And thankfully, I've had a very supportive circle of friends who also look at qualitative achievements in life and expressing yourself rather than checking the box of saying, how many lakhs are you earning and what kind of card you have. That didn't really matter. Self-expression and being honest was more important than anything else which you define as success, Tanisha, traditional terms.
I'll add a little bit to what Aparna is saying, because one is what she's really proving is that career is a marathon, right? It's not a sprint. And so, now these changing careers are becoming more and more the norm because you live longer and, you have options to do more things. And the other thing I think she brings to the table is this sense of fun. I always tell people, if you want to spend 12 to 14 hours of your day doing something, that's like half your life. And if you're not having fun doing it, what are you doing? I don't believe in 9 lives. So, just bringing this other aspect in and someone like Aparna doing it, I think that's amazing. It's really showing people a different end goal.
Truly is. And it's so interesting that you've both, in your own very unique ways, of course, embraced the change that has, come your way. And then you've built what you've built from there on. So just fantastic to hear, how the trajectory has been for the both of you. So thanks for sharing that piece. I'm going to move on to the next question, which is a piece I'm really, really hoping you both can answer for us in some way. So we've seen, and Aparna, you probably have far more data than we do, but typically between the 8 to 12-year peak post-qualification mark is where most women, at least in the Indian legal system, lawyers drop off, whether they're in in-house roles, whether it's law firms, whether it's practicing counsels that are doing independent legal work. And I'm not sure why that happens. Maybe you both can throw light. But given that you've both had your own short breaks in different ways, I know, Tejal, for you, when you moved to Singapore and were a new mother, and Aparna, for you, of course, when you took the 6-month sabbatical to just figure out what next, right? Can you tell us a little bit about, how the comeback for each of you was and what made that comeback really possible? Because you both could have dropped off at the time, but there was that little gap and then you came back in, and how. So you may want to start with Tejal. Do you want to go first and then we move to Aparna?
Sure. So I took a break essentially for about 18 to 22 months. And honestly, maybe, I don't know whether it was these not so great motherly instincts, but I really wanted to get back. And I was told that, look, your daughter's 18 months old, she can go to preschool. So I started sending, not preschool, daycare is what it was called. And, every morning I had to drop her off to this daycare. And when I dropped her off there, I could hear her till the end of the road, weeping, crying, bawling her guts out because I was leaving her there. And I just constantly felt like a completely heartless mother. And then the supervisor at the daycare told me that, look, it's fine. If she continues post 15 days, then she's not emotionally ready. And I don't think you should take the step. She stopped crying on day 14. Okay.
God bless her.
It was heart-wrenching to get back. But it happened. And I almost saw it as a sign that, yes, I could go back and do something and get back to work. But I do really feel that long breaks don't work. If someone says, I'm going to wait for my kids to pass out of school, go to middle school, graduate, there's two things there. One is I sometimes think your kids need you more when they are older than when they're babies. Honestly, they have milk and they poop, okay, for the first few months. Not very exciting. And they smile twice a day. But when they're teenagers, when they're older, they want to connect with you. They want to talk to you. They need you around. So I don't think there is a right time to get back. What I've seen, though, is many women who've stayed out of the workforce for a long time, they find it very difficult to get back. I think it's a couple of reasons. One is it's very difficult to start from the bottom again. It requires a whole different mindset to say, I'm going to sit with the 25-year-olds. I'm going to be at the bottom of the ladder. I'm going to earn peanuts. Of course, I've heard some of sort of the condescending husbands say, oh, you can go earn your pocket money now. And it's tough for them to get back. They have developed a status symbol for themselves. So I definitely think putting in the long hours, doing things you haven't done for so many years, it's very, very difficult to get back. I know some have, and that's fabulous, but it's not the norm. Once you're out, it's difficult to get back into full-time work. I think what's really important here is to sort of, when there's a new mother or when there is sometimes I look at myself now, I have older parents. I would love to take a break again, and spend time with my mom. So it's really looking beyond the temporary clouds that come in different times of our career, being able to see beyond them and being able to take breaks when you need to. And soon I think we're going to see breaks, not just, women having children, but different breaks in life for different things. And so, sabbatical was a bad word. It was like, oh, you're out of a job, you haven't found something else. Now it's more acceptable if someone wants to take a break. So, I'm firmly of the view, take the break when you need it. Don't get used to it. It's like COVID, right? Very difficult to get out of track pants now.
What a fantastic analogy. That's true. That's true. Okay. That's very insightful. Thanks, Tejal. Aparna, something from you on this.
I'll say a couple of things, and I won't bore you with what I do with companies now, because I think that's one of the bigger questions we face. But I think if I were to really look at the root of it, is I think that our expectations of caregiving, they are completely skewed against women. And I think the biggest damage to any kind of parity is that we are not willing to challenge the norm. So, one of the favorite questions when I do my training sessions with youngsters is that when two people get married, and Tejal, you had a pact, but mostly it's an autopilot. Who shifts the city? And they all say, hey, the woman. I'm like, why? So I think a lot of times I think that just the larger societal background of not distributing the caregiving load equally has been the biggest reason why women do not come back to the workforce after certain points, in their career journey. It could be marriage, it could be, childbirth, etc. And I think more than that, it's also that institutionally, I think we don't treat maternity returnees as equal citizens. I think look at most of the law firms as well. If there is just so much of a pressure to be partner within X number of years, or to really be on that, I used to call it a treadmill to nowhere, pardon my calling it that anybody who takes a slightly divergent path, somebody wants to travel the world, somebody wants to explore some creative thing for a year, somebody wants to have a baby. When you came back, you were just given a knowledge management role or something else. Now, I have nothing against knowledge management roles, but this kind of intellectual condescension, I kind of think that it does more damage than what we see. That you are unwilling to respect somebody who's different or who has taken a different journey, and you are not willing to relook at how you practice your operations. It could be law, it could be management, it could be finance, whatever it is, to really make I don't even want to use the word adjustments. It sounds condescending, but you're really not going to align it with lived realities of people. And I think that is the biggest damage. And in fact, anecdotally, I must tell you, I met the CHRO of one of India's largest listed companies, and we were talking about maternity returnees, and he said, "Bahut leave leti hain." So I said, "Can you pull data?" So he said, he had this perception that a maternity returnee in his team took 6 days. I mean, you add the half days, everything, and took 6 days off in a month. And I said, "Can you pull out the data of the rest of the team?" And a lot of the younger folks, both men and women, bachelors, they had bunked a lot of Mondays, late coming. They had almost 11 days off. And I said, "Now, this is the data speaking to you. And that's my job now in D&I, that, there is just this perception that maternity returnees mostly, or career people who've taken a career break or done something different, they're not good enough, they're not serious enough, they won't put in what we have to do." And that just gets added on with the law firm or the litigation practice. Look, I talk to a lot of my friends who are in litigation. The cause list comes out a night prior, right? So you have to just dump everything and get onto that file and dust off put off the dust from the file and say, "Oh my God, 3 years ago we filed this, it's come up now." So I think institutionally, we are unwilling to look at how we practice the law. And we are not willing to make it aligned with lived realities of people. And unfortunately, I personally think it impacts both men and women equally, or men and women both. Perhaps the focus or the burden on women is higher because of the larger caregiving. But unless we are willing to really relook at the scourge of the billable hour, as I call it, or the 7 years to partnership, all those kind of cliches that have become, I don't think we're going to solve this problem. And unfortunately, when I was in a law firm and I have worked with some of the most brilliant minds in this country, a lot of them have not come back to the workforce. And that is really a talent loss that we cannot justify ourselves. So that's something I think people should look at in more depth.
Most certainly. Well said, both of you. Thank you. That was actually quite insightful. And in fact, we're trying to work on a survey at the moment to understand, why this is happening, why we're losing women in this exact sort of time frame that we spoke of. So we're hoping we will release the survey sometime in the next couple of weeks. Though to those who are watching and to the both of you, please spread the survey as much as you can, because we're really, really hopeful that we'll be able to pull in more data. So that's really the hope. So yeah, Vikas?
Yeah, so Aparna, just building on that, because you raised some very interesting points about how a lot of the structures are not conducive to both men and women having flexible and kind of careers and ones that they can enjoy. So what from the kind of what you've done and what you've seen having done that legal route, what kind of cultural interventions can we bring into workspaces to make these much more enabling environments for for women and men at the same time as well?
Right. So I think because past 3 years I have worked with organizations or companies across sectors, but I will keep my interventions more specific to law because I think our audience will primarily be lawyers. So I think the first thing which I definitely think, apart from it's very easy to use big words like equality and non-discrimination, but I think the first thing we have to really address at the law firms and in law practice is the peer pressure, because I think the peer pressure can be crippling. How soon are you going to make partner? What transactions are you working in? What are your billable hours? I think that peer pressure can be really crippling. That's one. I think we have to start looking at people as human beings and as people who qualitatively bring a skill set to the table and not measure everything on the yardstick of certain kinds of very strict parameters. That's one. I think the second bit, and I'm going to be very frank about this, is I think that I have seen this only in the legal profession, that there is a lot of obnoxious behavior which is not called out just because the person is senior or the person has a lot to teach you. I've had instances where somebody, people fairly senior to me have not spoken to me in a proper manner and have misbehaved with me. I'm not talking about harassment. I'm just talking about obnoxious behavior. And I was advised to take it in my stride because I got to learn a lot from that person. And I said, look, this is not the kind of Guru Dakshina you should expect out of me. It's a senior's job to teach me and to mentor me, and I will make mistakes, and I'm okay to be pulled up on mistakes, but there is a line you cannot cross when you talk to me.
Aparna,
I personally think
you're right, because there's a lot of lack of respectfulness.
Absolutely.
Right?
I think that
what you're pointing to.
Absolutely.
And we've all heard stories, right? Files being thrown, abuses being hurled. And like you said, this is not sexual harassment or anything. It's just pure play
bad behavior. Right. And I don't see the reason why I should, I have been 21, I have been 30, I'm now 40. I stood up to that when I was 20, I stood up to that when I was 30, and I still stand up to it. Whether it's a clients can be unreasonable. There are seniors who can be unreasonable. There are peers who can be unreasonable. Nothing should make you have to trade your dignity to get that assignment or to just fall, be accepted in that place. And I think that, as youngsters, you have to stand up and call that out. So I think because yes, please, Tanisha.
Very difficult to stand up because I've been in that position and I know a lot of my friends have too. And Tejal, maybe you have some insight here as well. It's really difficult to stand up to an obnoxious senior. And I'm talking about someone who was just 3 or 4 years my senior, right? Screaming across the hallway, throwing things, bad behavior through the day because I missed a comma or a full stop. How do you control them? They spiral out of control, and boundary setting in those moments is virtually impossible. And you're trying to hang on to that job because you're calling it experience. It's just that it's not a legal experience, not legal training at all. It's a whole different kind of experience. How do you set the boundaries with such people? If you both can shed some light, it'll be great.
So look, it happens in-house too, right? In corporates also. The problem is, I think we're defining as, if a person is successful, we can accept everything. And it's not just in law. We accept illegalities they do, we accept tax evasions, we accept everything as long as they're successful. Society does not look down upon anything and only values what they call monetary and other success. So I think going back really to Aparna's point of what is success to be defined as is very important for the younger generation, because these are the leaders of tomorrow. They are the successful people of tomorrow, and everybody will do as they see, not do as they are told. If those juniors will be seniors tomorrow, and if they think that that particular kind of behavior is not is condoned and not condemned, then it's a sign of success. If I can throw a file at someone, I have arrived, right? The other piece of it really is a lack of role models. Because when I was early in my legal profession, there were a very small handful of women lawyers who were doing well. And they had a stereotype, which was aggressive, loud, backslapping the men, shouting in court. And if you were not that, you wouldn't succeed. I'm really glad that we've got this whole new genre of women coming in who don't have to display those characteristics to actually be successful as lawyers. Because we're not then appreciating them for their acumen, but whether they can be heard over everybody else in a courtroom or in a boardroom. The other piece of it really is also this corporate culture, right? Work gets done after hours at cocktails. Why? Deals get closed at 4 a.m. in the morning with beers. I mean, these things, I'm not saying women don't drink, but the point is that the more professionalism you bring into the culture, and to your point, Tanisha, of respect, I think women will have sort of more of those opportunities without having to change themselves. So women today think they need to change themselves, become like this to succeed. And it's really not dependent on their expertise at all. So, I used to have these conversations about, why can't we have lunch instead of dinner? Why can't we have evenings instead of nights? In terms of gatherings and meetings. And the men would say, fine, you all go home at 8 and then we're all going, to the pool table and we're all doing our thing, which is fine. But then that's where work gets discussed. So it is tough for women. I think a lot of the younger generation has kind of closed that gap. But to Aparna's point, it's not about equality. It's about equity. Are we giving people what they need to succeed individually? Not like equality in all sense of the word. Everyone doesn't like everything. Everyone's not good at everything. Everyone's not the same. So what are the opportunities we are giving each one of them individually based on their individual needs to succeed? But I think it's a societal issue which kind of permeates into, the profession.
Workplace, yeah, sure.
I think if I may just add, and I'm going to be again quite frank, I think it's institutions have to wake up that when you hire people, you have to put frameworks to address these issues in place. Everything cannot be a toss-up between, hey, this person is a high performer. If I tell them to behave themselves, they may leave. If that's going to be the whetstone on which you are taking your decisions, you will not be able to fix the culture, and you will retain that one person, but you will lose out 500 other people. So I think the culture really, and I thought of going into that is because it is peculiar to what I have seen, when I was working myself. And of course, have a very, very strong enabling environment. I grew up in a law firm which really believed in young people. You wanted to do something, they gave you the opportunity to do something. And I really think that was a game changer. I'm a first generation lawyer. I had no, background in law. I thought I was good at what I was doing and I wanted to do certain things and I was given that opportunity. So the more you can create an enabling environment, not be too constrained by the queue that one has to follow, because that's a glass ceiling of sorts for everyone, not just women, but even younger lawyers, right? The more you can have a merit-based enabling environment where opportunities are given to high potential people, and even those who may not have high potential, to really mentor them into roles which suits their what they want to do. I think that will really remove all the peer pressure and the that kind of a skewed burden to perform in a particular manner to be accepted at the workplace.
Thanks.
Yeah, I would, one more thing is that you don't just need this mentorship and coaching when you're younger. You need it all through.
Absolutely.
So I was like just a couple of years ago, and I was in a meeting with a large public government-owned company in India, and they're a little more traditional. And through the meeting, I was sitting here and there were like men on either side of me. And the guy on the other side kept referring to actually my CEO on the, on my right for every answer. Like I would ask the question, he would answer, to my right. And at one point, my CEO had to look at him and say, but she is the decision maker on this. So it's not that you need it only when you're younger. I mean, people think, okay, first 5 years I've coached you, now go fight for yourself, right? It's difficult the whole way. And it's important sort of to give those interventions that Aparna is talking about, not just early in your career, but throughout your career, because there'll be so many different situations that you don't know how to handle.
True. That's insightful. Thank you both. That was actually a lot packed into this 40-minute conversation. Thanks a lot. And I think, Aparna, to sum up your takeaway, culture and performance can never be mutually exclusive, right? For organizations going forward, I think it's extremely important that we remember that. So thank you. That brings us to the end of this segment, ladies. Thank you so much for sharing all that you did, including your own personal stories. We're now moving on to the more fun part of this conversation, where we hope that you're going to be honest, for starters, and then, of course, a little bit irrational and impromptu as well, okay? So shall we get started? Are you ready? Okay, all right. So maybe we do it like this, that I ask the first set of questions to Tejal and then we go to Aparna. Shall we do it like that? I'll do 5
I love the
first
fact
with
that
Tejal.
you've given me some breathing space. So.
I think Tejal wants to defer it as long as possible.
Tejal would like to leave now, ideally. Her dog's calling.
I'm scared of my own honesty sometimes.
This is the time to bring up my internet is not working issues.
Yeah.
So.
All right. Let's start the interrogation with you, Tejal. The first question is, if not a lawyer, what would you be?
A hairdresser.
A hairdresser.
I love cutting hair. All through COVID, I've just gone to everyone in my house and tried to cut their hair. It's something I do want to learn in life. So I hope I will.
You want to show us their pictures so that we know whether you're going to be successful or not?
Only the husband allowed it, and I cut my own, but
okay, fair.
Kids kind of ran away.
Tejal, I could have a sideline conversation there because we are market leaders in the beauty industry for events.
That's true.
I'll get you an internship, at Lux Salon, or for example.
Oh, I would love it. It's very satisfying, really.
Set this up, Vikas. Set it up for her, please. She really looks like she wants to.
I thought she might have said agony aunt, but hairdresser's better.
All right.
You know that one better.
The next question then. If there was one woman in history that you could ask one question to, Tejal, whom would it be and what would you ask?
I would ask Kasturba Gandhi a question, because I'm just amazed at how this lady could be a wife, of a man who was revered. And I don't know, kind of build her own little world around his universe, her whole life. And it just amazes me how some women do this, and they do it so beautifully without losing their own identity in the process, which is amazing. So I would ask her, how did you do it? How did you feel? How did you not want to kind of whack him in the head and say, what about me? I don't know. I mean, many questions.
I was reading an article the other day about Kasturba Gandhi and the celibacy piece, and I was intrigued too. So my intrigue is probably a little different than yours, Tejal. We'll keep that for an offline chat. We'll save that for later. Okay. All right. Next question: IQ or EQ? What makes better leaders today, and why?
I think neither. I think, to what Vikas said earlier, it's the AQ. It's really the adaptability quotient, because I think whatever you learn in school and whatever education you get is outdated within 6 months of passing. It really, I know I learned about Chandragupta Maurya and all that was great, but it doesn't help me today. So the way I see it is the IQ's gone a long time ago. From that perspective, I mean, the academia perspective, of course, you've got to be smart. But the EQ also, I think, is it's important. But I think the more we move towards sort of professionalism, we move towards remote working. It's losing its, I guess, significance as the number one. I would just go with adaptability, able to change, able to learn new things all the time. To me, that's the leader. I mean, look at COVID, right? Who expected the financial crisis? Who expected COVID? You never learned anything for it. You needed to adapt, and you needed to adapt really quickly.
True.
So,
AQ, that's a new one. We'll add it in the next set of questions. All right, the next question then. 3 words your ex-teammates or even current team members would use to describe your leadership style.
Pragmatic. Because I know some of these words because when I did my farewell from GE, they actually printed them all on a wine bottle for me. But the ones they came up with really were pragmatic, meticulous, and authentic. And I chose these over kind of the others they had printed there because I just thought they described me a little bit more.
Fair enough. Okay, super. Your next question, any one incident where you treated a team member in a certain way and then immediately you felt like, oh no, that was a mistake and you regretted it?
Yeah, so I had one huge regret in life. There was a guy who worked for me, and unfortunately he passed away a few years ago, but he was very, very different from everyone else in my team. He had a very casual style of speaking. Like if he would walk into the CEO's room, he would slouch and he would sort of say, is it lonely for leaders at the top? I mean, he would make these very offbeat questions, very intelligent person, but just wouldn't fit in to a corporate type environment. And he wore different clothes, everything was different. And I feel I didn't give him the ability to be different. I thought he didn't fit in. And at one point, he actually questioned me saying, you talk a lot about diversity. I'm different. And diversity is not just the stereotypical diversity, it is just embracing different people. And I was like, you're right, And I remember that lesson learned my whole life, which is, we just dismiss people who are not like us or who don't behave the way we expect them to behave.
True. That's an honest share. Thanks, Tejal.
Yeah, thank you for that.
Aparna, redirecting the questions to you now. If not a lawyer, what would you be?
I would have, I never planned about it, but in hindsight, I would have been in the administrative service, or I could have been a disc jockey. That was my favorite thing to do. I also went and looked up classes in Karol Bagh when I was in 3rd year in Luthra, and I was saying, what do I do on weekends? But the place was so shady. The guy who was teaching the DJ course, -3 basement. I was like, okay, I'm not going here. So that was a career that never happened. But yeah, so either an IAS officer or maybe a disc jockey.
Oh, cool. Okay.
Never too late.
Tanisha, we should have a separate program where we've got Tejal hairdressing and Aparna DJing to that. They would be phenomenal. Phenomenal these
I'm
two.
saying this for myself. You may lose all your audience. So
it's okay. Tejal's going to be cutting hair. There's not going to be too much of an audience, I suspect.
Hey, I'm sure I'll do a good job.
Yeah, I'm sure you will. Under 12 only. Like that'll be our audience.
Oh, they are the worst. I'm going to pick the guys who are half bald. There's nothing much there.
Okay, Aparna, your next question. If there was one woman in history that you could ask a question to, who would it be and why?
I would have asked Helen Keller, how did she motivate herself to do what she did?
Wow. Okay, super. IQ or EQ or AQ now that we know of it, what makes better leaders today and why?
I think both IQ and EQ. Because I really think that a lot of times we make managers or supervisors based on technical skill, and people may not really understand what it is to be a people manager. And I think I have seen a lot of people who become more and more unidimensional as bosses or leaders or managers, because they think I'm the best lawyer, so I'm the best manager, and that may not be true. So I definitely think that, a lot of EQ, which is just about empathy and understanding and all, will go a long way in addressing a lot of the issues we've talked.
Fair enough. Okay. 3 words your team, ex-team members or current team members would use to describe you.
Well, one would be hard taskmaster for sure. The other would be empathetic, and the third would be brutally authentic and honest.
Nice. Okay. An incident that you may have had where you treated a team member a certain way and almost immediately regretted it.
I think maybe not one incident, but maybe when I was in my second or third year, I had just become senior associate. I was handling a lot more transactions or work on my own. I had become very impatient, and I thought I was getting impatient with people. Your expectation is different. And hats off to one of my mentors at that law firm, who I went up to him saying, "Look, I don't want my personality to change. Why am I getting to become a different person?" And he said, "Look, to be a real leader, you have to fill the gaps for everyone. Everyone will not come a 10 on 10. And you have to be the 3 on 10 for somebody, if somebody's 7, and you have to be the 6 for somebody who's 4. And I think that was a life lesson that really made me a better person and a better team player. And because if I had not sought out that interjection, that point of time, I would have become perhaps a toxic personality in some way. But this taught me to, as Tejal said, walk with everyone and be everything for everyone in the team that you can be.
Fair enough. Okay. So the next set of questions, again, Aparna, we'll start with you and then go to Tejal, okay? So, Aparna, how did you celebrate when you made partner?
I don't really remember. It was 2012. So I would have probably, the team and I would have gone out for dinner, which we did very often. Okay. So it would have been just a fun dinner or something.
Okay, fair. One person who was your strongest sponsor professionally?
I've been lucky, I spent 10 years of my life at Lutra, and I think in the beginning years, some of the seniors I worked with, they were very, very, they had a vision for themselves, and they really understood how to give space to people who were as opinionated as I could be. And that also meant that they were willing to give you the space to staff matters the way you wanted to, take decisions early, and really help you explore your personality or your professional development in that way. So I don't think I can take one name because I would be discrediting the others. But I think I got lucky. I worked with some very good leaders very early on in my career.
Okay, super. 3 things you cannot go through the day without.
A cup of tea, for sure. Then making my to-do list. I'm a freak. I need to make a short to-do list and a long to-do list. And 20 minutes, I actually copy things from my did not finish what's sitting on my to-do list to the new to-do list. So that's really, but that gives me a sense of how much I can while away my time in the day and how much I really need to get done that day. And I need some silent time, because I think a lot of our work, whether I was at a law firm or now, you just are leading a lot of conversations. They can be very, very tiring. So I really need that time where I can recharge, and I can also, now my job is a little bit more creative. I do a lot of content creation. So I really need that space of no conversation, sometimes 1 hour, sometimes 4 hours, where I just can't talk to anyone.
Okay, super. One piece of advice you would give 16-year-old Aparna?
I would think when I started off, professionally, there was not so much of an understanding about physical fitness or mental health. And I would definitely have brought in some more aspects of work-life balance, just from a physical fitness perspective.
Okay, fair. The most empowering thing about being a woman in law is dash.
I don't know if it's about being women in law, but I think just being a lawyer, I think you can speak your mind more easily than perhaps a lot more. Okay. Because you can understand the risks and the ramifications.
Fair. Okay, when you're hiring for your team, the one thing that immediately has your attention is dash.
I think the person's earnestness and how willing they are to learn.
Super. All right, Tejal, the next set of questions back at you. How did you celebrate when you made senior executive on the in-house side?
What a black mark. So, I mean, I have to give you the background for your viewers. I mean, I called up my mother to tell her the news, and you're given a larger car allowance to get yourself a car when you get promoted. And I asked her, I said, what should I buy? And she said, a black mark, because you've only arrived if you have a black mark. So that's what I did.
Oh, nice. Okay. So you did arrive and you continue to arrive, right, Tejal?
Well, I'm enjoying the car, but yeah, it's a bit embarrassing.
Don't be. You've worked very hard for it. Don't be embarrassed at all. Okay, next question. One person who was your strongest sponsor professionally?
I think, without naming the person, but my general counsel at GE. And the fact that I moved so many countries, I was given opportunities wherever I was, supporting me through the tragedies in my life. I think the organization did a lot for me, and that helped.
Okay. 3 things you cannot go through your day without.
Diet Coke, my dog, because he keeps me company, especially since I'm working from home. So he's always at my feet, like I said, snoring away. And same as Aparna, I have sticky notes. I have to keep notes and to-do lists. And I feel really good when they're all ticked off at the end of the day.
Don't we all? Okay. One piece of advice you would give 16-year-old Tejal.
People end up where they should be. So don't worry about it.
Nice. Okay. The most empowering thing for you about being a woman in law is dash.
I think it's enabled me to always understand both sides of a story. It's not so much about being a woman in law as it is just about, law is a discipline that allows you analysis, that allows you to understand options, interpretations, ways of looking at things. That's helped, and I think it's helping, all aspects of life in some way, just those skills more than the law.
Okay. Your next question, when you're hiring for your team, the one thing that immediately has your attention is dash.
Energy.
Energy.
I look for positive energy in the person, and it immediately strikes me as the most attractive thing in that candidate, because I know that they bring, if you have the energy and the enthusiasm, the rest of it just follows.
Correct. True. So you'd hire Vikas, Aparna, and me, you think?
We're seeing the energy on the show, but that's what strikes you first.
Correct.
I think.
Fair. Okay.
In a candidate.
Over to you.
Aparna, I'll come to you. The most underrated skill that leaders should possess is?
That at me, because I couldn't hear you.
Yeah, I'll do this next few questions that you can then go back to.
Sure. The most underrated skill, I would think empathy.
Right. The app on your phone, which you open maximum number of times in a day is?
Instagram.
Oh.
Which statement's truer? Women making it to the top is tougher, or women staying at the top is tougher?
Definitely making it to the top is tougher. But not because of anything women are lacking, but perhaps of externalities.
Yeah. And then for one whole day, you're in charge of making policies and implementing them. No questions asked, and these will not be reversed or changed for the next 100 years. What policy level change, a bit like our government today actually, but what policy level change would you bring to benefit women lawyers?
I really honestly can't think of anything I would do for women lawyers, though there is a lot to be done. But I would definitely want transgender employment to really become mandatory, and along with capacity building and proper job. It's a dream I really hope comes true, to see more and more trans people employed in respectful and dignified professions, and to really mainstream them in. I actually get goosebumps when I say this, but if that's something I could do, I would think I've used my life for.
That's phenomenal. The most daring thing you've done professionally and personally?
Well, professionally, definitely to quit a law firm partnership and to just, I had a wild dream nobody understood for the first year. Now it's become a buzzword. That was definitely the most risky thing that I did. Personally, I don't think I've taken many big risks, but when I finished class 12, I did nothing for a year because I always wanted to be a lawyer, and I kind of missed the law school entrance because it was a small town. Information in 1999, it didn't flow so seamlessly. So I said, to hell with it, I'm not going to do anything else. I will bunk a year and do nothing, and then make it in time to be able to file the application for the entrance. So yes, I took a year off then as well.
Super. An early sabbatical before you'd even started work.
Absolutely.
One hack you would give women in law firms and on their entrepreneurial journeys?
I would think for entrepreneurs, I would say believe in yourself, because it takes time to set up. And, I've had my phases as an entrepreneur as well, because I tried to do something which is very different from what is happening in the market. And somebody told me, a gentleman who's a senior from law school, that it takes 1,000 days to set up a business. So I think that's what I would say, that, wait it out. If your idea is strong, you will see it materialize. And for law firms, I would say that speak your mind and define your boundaries. Whether it's a client, whether it's a senior, you define the boundaries, and don't be hesitant in doing so.
Yeah, I think both very good tips. And speaking your mind, for youngsters as well. That's a great tip, because it's easy to get their voice suppressed when they're growing in a firm. Tejal, over to you. The most underrated skill that leaders should possess is
humility.
Okay, the app on your phone which you open maximum number of times in a day is?
During COVID, Netflix. Otherwise, WhatsApp.
Which statement's truer? Women making it to the top is tougher, or women staying at the top is tougher?
So, initially I was actually with Aparna saying women making it, but somehow the last few years I've seen a fall of some of the women on top. And that makes me sad that, role models for others have not been able to sort of stay there. And that's been a bit disappointing to me.
Okay. And then for one whole day, you're in charge of making policies and implementing them. No questions asked, not reversible. What policy level change would you bring in to benefit women lawyers?
So look, I have to take the opportunity to talk about the General Counsel Association we just started a couple of weeks ago. But the objective of the association is really to bring recognition for the in-house counsel as a profession, and as a separate and distinct sort of class of lawyers. The reason is it's also beneficial for women lawyers because the in-house counsel role is seen as something you do if you failed in a law firm or failed in litigation, or something which is like a second-class citizen in our world. And I think that does a disservice to both men and women who want to move in-house. And I see more and more women also moving in-house because, and so I think this is something that's going to help everyone. So I hope it does come about sometime.
Yeah, no, all the best with that, because it's much needed and has been much talked about for a number of years, that we do need a decent association to bring the community together from a more intellectual point of view, rather than simply going on retreats, for example. So the most daring thing you've done professionally and personally?
I guess remarried and come to India without a job. I could argue that, and people could argue that it is moving to OYO after GE, but that was not risky. That was very calculated. I knew where I was in my career. I knew what I wanted next. So just the fact that I gave up everything, gave up the life I know, came here, had no job, and just had faith that so late in my life, I could just make it all work.
Personally, cutting your husband's hair.
See, it helps. I have perks.
So one hack you give women in in-house roles.
It's not about work-life balance. And so when you come in, you might have a little more control over your time, but you need to be as hardworking and dedicated as anywhere, is what I would look at it.
Okay, super. And what about, what about this stage of your career as well? Like you just mentioned, a lot of women drop off, but one hack for women at the top as well, like who've got to senior positions.
That you have a larger responsibility now as you have become a role model to others. And giving back to society and paying it back at this point, like Aparna is trying to do and everyone else, is critical, where you think beyond yourself and help others.
Super. I mean, phenomenal answers, I think, from both of you. We want to go on to the next segment.
That brings us to the end of this segment. Thank you both for generously and honestly answering everything we asked of you. The last piece of this conversation is where we're going to ask each of you to either bring a thing or a memory. It could be a material possession or just a conversation that holds a very special place in your professional life, and tell us why. So, Aparna, maybe you want to start off?
I love it how you volunteer me to the guillotine first, but apart from that, Tanisha, I don't have a materialistic possession which I have, which I can show, but I can share a memory, and I think it follows the same theme of carrying your head high and not and defining boundaries. So I think I was in the second day of my profession, and my then partner, who was the boss of the team, he was conflicted and he couldn't go for a negotiation. So I was packed off, and he had a lot of faith in me that she will, carry on this negotiation. I knew the issues, etc. As I walked into that room, the other side, there was a managing partner of another tier 1 law firm who was horrible to me, because I think he thought that there's this little girl who's here, and everything I said, he said, I have not seen this, and my experience, this has not happened, and said a lot of unparliamentary things to me and about the law firm I was representing. And I just kept my cool, and I kept saying, and I kept taking him back to the clauses in the, in the agreement we were negotiating. And I just kept to it, and I just saying, I just kept defining the boundary and kept taking him back to the discussion. Well, of course, that went off well. 3 months after that transaction closed, the other side, and the CEO, CFO, GC, all of them were in that room, and that was a 6.5-hour grueling negotiation where this gentleman just keep trying to say a lot of unwanted stuff. But 3 months after that transaction closed, that client hired us and came to me saying, we want you to be our counsel. And I'm talking about 2008, so it's been many years till date. They have been my clients. Even when I started Samana, they were the first to reach out to me saying, we want to know what you're doing. What can you do for us to improvise our workplace situation? So I just think that if you speak your mind, if you're authentic, and even if it's scary, if you define the boundaries, you will create that mark for yourself.
Oh, wow.
Phenomenal again.
Fantastic. It's a bit mind-numbing, actually. I can't, I'm just processing the story, and that's why the pause. Wow, that's something, Aparna.
But I actually think that, maybe people are always looking at you, and if you do your bit, you will get what is the best thing to come out of that conversation, even if it's initially scary or intimidating in some way.
Fair. Okay, super. Thanks for sharing that. Tejal, over to you. What do you have for us?
Wait, let me show you something. Give me a second. Okay. I don't know if you can see this. So I don't know if you can see it the right way around, but
Wow.
this was a little thing that they gave me at my farewell in G, which says, "You move my cheese."
Wow.
And it's really precious because that's my favorite book. And every time I would start a new role or a new chapter, I would always show the team, the takeaways from that book, which would say your cheese is moved, and the faster you get used to the cheese, and the new cheese, and let go of the old cheese, the more successful you'll be. And it used to be the standing joke, right? That Tejal has this standard thing that she does every time. And just to get something like this, where the team came back and said that I moved their cheese, I mean, it was so rewarding. It was a sentimental moment. So I love it.
Wow. And is that picture that they put up there? That's like a portrait of you, is it?
Yeah. But it was more about sort of, you moved our cheese. So
Oh, cool.
it was really nice.
That's very, very nice. Okay, super. That brings us to the end of this interview, ladies. Thank you both. You've been wonderful, even in our offline chat and, of course, live today. It's been a pleasure getting to know the both of you. And I'm sure our audiences are going to continue to watch this show once it's up on YouTube as well. And thanks a lot for making the time. We're truly honored.
Yeah. And
Thank you for having us.
Thank you for being authentic. I think, like what Aparna has mentioned a few times, it just makes a real big difference when you can bring a true self even to this kind of conversation.
Vikas has promised us he's indemnifying us after this conversation. So if you have any issues, reach out to Vikas and team.
Aparna, don't worry. Tejal's hiring the three of us. She likes our energy. We're sorted.
I'm an entrepreneur, so hiring is not a concern for me. I'm just talking to you.
No, I've enjoyed the conversation so much, and actually, I feel like I know Aparna so much better, and we've so many things in common. So it's been lovely. Thank you so much.
Very nice to meet you as well. We haven't met before this.
This has been enjoyable. Please meet each other in Delhi. One in the black Merc and the other in an auto. Send us a picture. Thank you both for doing this.
We'll do, for sure.
Enjoy your Sunday evening. Bye. Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.